everything's all pressed nicely and flat. So what I want you to do is just take your flap of lining that I've asked you to leave loose and just fold that back. Put a pin in. Just be careful of the pin because you might stab yourself with it whilst you're doing your zip, but we just need that lining bit to definitely just stay out of the way for us for the time being. And that's the best way. Okay. So we've got a lovely edge here, and what I want to do now is just measure to make sure that the waistband is the same width, and it is on mine. Look, that's what we need to do. If your waistband isn't right, it isn't the same width at this stage, it's worth fiddling around with it a bit to get it to the right stage, because you'll never get your zip to match up perfectly if this bit doesn't match up anyway. So the thickness of your left or your right waistband at this point at the zip needs to equal the same as the other. If it doesn't, see if you can work out where you've gone wrong on your seam allowances. So match your seam allowances together, and if one's slightly bigger than the other, just undo it a few millimetres, just say 1 or 2 centimetres, and redo it, either taking in a bit more or letting a little bit out, so that when you fold back your 1/2 inch for here and you measure it against your 1/2 inch for your seam allowance for your waistband there, it's as near as damn it equal. Because if you don't do that at this stage, it's never going to be right anyway, so you might as well take the time to do that now. Okay, and then what we're going to do then now, so that's the telling off done for the time. Hopefully yours is all matching and all straight. The next thing that I'm going to do is put in an invisible zip that I picked up earlier from the Mertheria, the haberdashery shop. It isn't perhaps as long as I might have liked, but I'm hoping it's going to be okay, because I've made my scoop neck a little bit scoopier on my back of my dress. And the beauty of an invisible zip, I have got I think I've got a little YouTube thing of talking about zips, is that when this is sewn in, when you sew it in, these teeth roll back when you're sewing it in, and you sew right in on that edge, so that it actually pulls the fabric together right up, so it does almost look like there's no zip at all there. So if you pull that apart, you can see the teeth in the zip. And you need a special invisible zipper foot to do it, which is the best suggestion. Don't you just love Tupperware? Takeaway containers for storing sewing things. Where is it? There it is. So on my Janome, it looks like this. So you've got a little prong on the front here. Hopefully you can see that, which then separates and pushes the teeth of the zipper out of the way for sewing. So when you're sewing, there's a groove in the end and the bottom here as well, and that locks itself into the zipper foot and pushes it to one side like that, and then as it's sewing along, it straightens it up so that the needle going in through there it's actually folding that coil of the zip back as it sews along. So yeah, we'll wait and see. So we can do that. So that's what we're going to do next. I do tend to just go for one side, then I do the zip up, match it up on the other side and just sew that bit first, and then I go back and sew it from the top. So let's have a go at doing that and see how we get on. So I am going to turn the zip. So if you have the zip this way, you can then see which way round it needs to go. So that one's going to go onto this side here. And I'm going to try and take the teeth up towards the top, so I don't need to have a hook and eye at the top. There's my pins. So I've got the teeth. So you can't sew through that foot there. It'll break your needle. You need to be sewing down the side. So we're going to start right at the top here. We're not going to go backwards and forwards because that's going to create bulk that we don't need. We're just going to go straight down. And that will then just sew that straight down onto there for us, because we don't need to worry about this first one matching up. We're going to match the second one up to the first one. When you go over the waistband, make sure that your grosgrain ribbon, if you're using it, is straight in, is straight up as well, and that your seam allowances are pushing towards your waistband as well, into the centre of the waistband, because that's the other thing that we want to make sure that's all straight. And that will just anchor in the waist tie as well, so that when we fold this back, it's actually holding quite nice and tight. Okay, so that's the next bit then. Let's have a go at doing that to see how we get on, and I'll come back to you. So we've got the first side of our zip in here. We can just check that as well by just taking the zip back up again. And we can see that's going to roll over very nicely across into the seam. And I've got the stopper just at the top there as well. We can fold that zipper tape out of the way when we seal this over at the top, and that's pretty much at the top there, which I'm happy with. Now, just to add, one thing I didn't tell you about was I am just sewing this to the skirt. I'm not sewing it onto the lining at all, so the lining's kept out of the way for this little bit, and this bottom part of the skirt has not been sewn together as yet, because if we need to just adjust that at the hemline, we can do by a few millimetres. It's not going to matter so much. So what I want to do now, because this is all sewn up together, is find the other side of my waistband. And if we fold it over about the 1/2 inch, what I want to do is offer it up. So hold your tape flat, is offer it up so that that is in the same place as that one, because that's what we want. We want the zip to finish exactly the same as this way. So hold your fingernail there, holding it tight, turn it round the other way, and then you're wanting to grab just your seam allowance and just your zip at the same point, and you want to pin it to hold it still. Doesn't matter which way you pin it at the moment, as long as it just holds it. And then we're going to do the same lower down, so we're going to hold it together, and then we're going to put it together so that the seam allowance and the zip is at the right point there. Okay, hold it tight. Cross the other way into the seam allowance, holding it with your fingernails, making sure your seam allowances are all the right way and towards the centre of the waistband, and again put a pin there, because what we're going to do now is we're going to open up the zip, and we're just going to sew this bit here first, so that we've got, when we zip it up together, that then matches those two seam points just there, because that's one of our most important seam points. We can't change that once we've done it. The top here we can alter slightly if we need to, but the bottom here we need that to be right. So once you've got your pins in, open up your zip carefully because of your pins being in the way, and then that should fold back there. So now what I'm going to do is just put this back in the machine and literally just sew from there to there through across the waistband, making sure my seam allowance is the right direction. And then I'm going to zip it up again, and hopefully, if it has worked, then that should anchor that point together, and then we can go back to the top or back to the bottom and sew all the way down, knowing that those points then are going to match. This is the theory. I'll be back. So I have to admit, I did check it first before I've come back on camera, and it's within a millimetre on either side. I think from a distance that that's going to look like it's perfect, so I'm going to leave it with that. So hopefully you can see. Whether that's in your tolerance or not is up to you. For me, it is. So I'm going to leave that as it is now. The theory has worked in terms of what we've chosen to do. So I'm going to go now and complete the rest of the zip by opening it up and then just popping it into my into the sewing machine, and I'll start from this point here and sew down that way. Then I'll turn it round, start from here and sew down, because that will make sure I don't get any ruckles of fabric just at the point where the thing sorted through. So yeah, hopefully that's what I'm going to do next. So just bear with me and we'll do that bit. So we now have our zip in all the way down. The only thing that I would change if I was working on this as another project, but I think it's going to be hidden by the pattern, is, I don't know if you can see, let's put it this way around for you, is that there's a bit of a bigger gap here between this edge of the pleat and this edge of the pleat here, and ideally they would be right close together, but for me, for this, I think it's going to get lost in the pattern, and I don't think anybody's going to really notice, hopefully. So again, it all depends on what your tolerance is for perfectionism. If it would really bug you, go ahead and change it. You'll just have to take your zip out, undo your stitches on this waistband here and probably on the stay tape. Adjust that so that you're taking a little bit further back in to there, and then resew it again, just retack it and resew it, and that will correct that for you. But as I say, with this pattern on the fabric, I think that's going to get lost in there, and I think the pleats are going to pull slightly anyway as it's warm once I take these tacking stitches out, so that will do. So at the top here we've got our 2 edges as well, pretty much. Once we've got those dealt with those top bits of zipper tape, they'll be equal as well, so I'm happy with that. So yeah, that's ending at the right point. The zipper tab is just going to go down there. Oop, where's the edge? There it is, look. So that's together, so I'm happy with that as well. We can sort that out. So now what I'm going to do is carry on doing my seams on the back here. Now, I'm not sure that I can do my French seam all the way down the back of this skirt. I'm going to try, and if I do it, then I'll come back and let you know that I've managed to do it. I don't want to have a problem at the bottom of my zip though, so what I might do, so perhaps just do that, go down. Let's try it. I'll try it and see if I can get it to work for me. Hopefully it will. So I'll just do that, pull those together, make sure there's no gap there, and then turn it around to the right side, trim it and turn it around to the right side as I've done before, and then I will show you how we'll deal with the lining. But I'll come back to you, let you know how I've finished with this, because obviously if you're going to be doing the same thing and you want to line it, then you might need to do the same thing as me. So I'll come back to you and let you know what I choose to do in the end. So I've just finished sewing this French seam at the back here, and it's worked. So I know I've got a little gap just here, don't worry about that at the moment. But what I was more concerned about was that this would lie flat, and it does. So what I'm going to do now to close that little bit up at the bottom of the zip there, because what I did was, I did my first pass with my machine as much as I could do, rolled out the fabric, but it's just left a little bit of gap just between there and there, the bottom of the zip and there. So what I'm going to do is put on a zipper foot, not the invisible zipper foot, just a regular zipper foot, or I've actually got an adjustable zipper foot, which is really good, which is this one here. And that one really allows you to get close to the edges. So I'm going to position my needle up there in there, and I'm going to then be able to sew really close to there just to close that seam up. So that's what I'm going to do next. I know it seems like a lot of faff and changing feet round and whatever else, but it's really good practice just to get used to changing the feet on your machine and using the right tool for the right job. So this one is adjustable. It can go either side, so that's good. Just got it, I think I got it off eBay, but it is a Janome one, so I did get the branded one. And then when I finish doing that, I'll check that to make sure that it's all still lying flat, and if it is, then I'll just tack the ends of this zipper tape just down to the edges of the seam allowance only, and that'll just make sure they don't start flapping around and annoying me when I'm wearing it. Then we'll work on the lining and get the lining finished off. Just a quick mention as well, whenever you're changing your presser foot and using something like this, always just offer your needle down to your foot by hand, just using your hand crank, just to make sure that your needle's going to miss it, otherwise you could break a needle. I haven't, but I just was doing it automatically, and I thought, well, I've not told you to do that, so it's a good thing to know. So once you've actually got your foot on your machine, we can then orientate ourselves in our dress through all this ruffles and metres of fabric to where the seam is, and I'm going to pull the zip just back, find roughly where the stitches are. I'm not going to go right up to it. Tell you what I'm going to do from the other side actually. I'm going to sew up towards the zip from the end of the seam. So I'm going to locate where my last stitch was on the seam, and then I'm going to sew up towards here as far as I feel comfortable, and then I'm going to stop. If there is a little bit of a gap, I'm not going to worry too much about it, because when we sew these tags down, that'll make sure that's nothing shown, so we don't. Just protects our dignity, doesn't it? Make sure we've not got any underwear on show. So make sure this is all sitting nicely, because we've got it all right so far. Make sure that your needle is going to land right on top of the stitches. Backwards and forwards just to anchor our threads. Hold the zip out of the way, and then we're just going to sew along that line. I'm happy with that there. Reverse. So it isn't far, but it's just far enough to have left a gap. Take the threads off. Moment of truth. Hold your breath, folks. So, yeah, I'm happy with that. So I think it's just there that we've just sewn up. We just pull it apart. So now we've just got a few millimetres, look, that it's just pulling slightly apart. So what I'm going to do now is just tack down those zipper tabs to the seam allowance. That's the next job. I'll just change my zipper foot across. So this is just to the seam allowance, it's not to anything else. Just make sure your skirt's out of the way. Make sure the seam tab is staying central. Turn it round and just do the other side. Just unroll it slightly because the seam allowance is just rolled up slightly behind the back. Just make sure you cut your threads off nice and short, otherwise they will interfere with the way that you use your zip. All the threads look. Okay, let's have a little look. And yes, well, where are we? Can't even see it. It's that good. And that's just closed that up now so we can't see. We've got a little bit there, but it's not, it's pulling onto the zipper tape so you won't see it. The last thing that I'm going to do with this zip is I'm just going to work out, not the last thing I'm going to do with the zip because I want to tidy up the top first, but take the zip down, but on fine fabric like this and on some other fabrics, keep taking the zip down all the way to the bottom of the zip can actually cause a bit of tension on the fabric because it's hitting this point all the time, and that seam, it can eventually, oh, that's a bug, sorry, eventually make a hole on the back of the zip. So what I do is I work out where the edge of the seam is with the back of the zip, so the zip fully down is there, take it back up a couple of millimetres, and now what I'm going to do now is just hand stitch a couple of stitches across the end of the zip. So nice thin needle. We don't need much thread, just a bit. Oh, not got long left on my bobbin either. I must remember that. Okay, just double this thread up. And it just makes like a little stopper for the zipper so that it doesn't, zipper sound like American, don't I, or pretending to for the zip in English, in order that then, so this just goes through here at the bottom of the zip, and it just goes just underneath the teeth. Just fold the coils back and find your way through, so you're just going through by the coils and go over the top with your thread, so you're over stitching. Oh, and you only need like about 5 or 6 stitches, because even we know ourselves, don't we, if a zip gets one piece of thread caught in the zip, it generally won't work. So 5 or 6, it's not going to go through that, is it? We're getting finished. Anybody else getting nervous to know whether this dress is going to fit or not properly? Hopefully it is. And well, more importantly, it might fit, but does it suit me? That is going to be the question. I've not worn a dress with a pleated skirt for a long time. I think it looks nice for a special occasion. So we'll see if it works for us. But if you wanted to line the gored skirt as well, you could use this same method that we've used with the with the pleated skirt, you just leave the pleats out. Right, so that's taken that off. So always good to do that at this point so that we don't forget. So we just make sure that it's not got a couple of little whiskers of the fabric there. Let me just take those off just very carefully. Don't want to snip through the fabric. Okay, so we've got the end of the zip there. We can see that we've got a little bit of play in the very end of the zip somewhere. Oh, can't find it now. Probably just where we are actually. Yeah, it's just there, isn't it? But we're not going to see that once that's on. That's all going to stay straight. And then the zip goes down, but doesn't go into the last bit of the zip, so it protects that seam. So that's just created that. Right. So we need to just neaten it all on the inside now. Minor job. So there we go with our zip. Right, okay, so let's now turn the whole dress inside out. And what we're going to want to do now is look at getting this bit here. So we can undo these pins now, take these pins out. Just holding the fabric out, because when we're neating this off now, oh, rescue is falling this off the table, we're going to then have this top of the lining is going to have a small amount folded under for our seam allowance, and then that will then hand sew onto the stitching of the skirt here, and where we are here, the zip folds back like that. Oops, sorry, making it all a bit complicated for you. And this seam here is going to, this edge in here is going to finish on the edge of the zip there. So it neatens all the way down the edge of the zip there, makes that all nice and neat. And then once this here is folded back and has been stitched down too, that will make it all neat on the inside, because all of this will be folded back. And that will make it all beautiful on the inside. So that's our next job. So let me just get my head around that. A few loose threads we need to get rid of here. Haven't trimmed off earlier. So let's just have a look and see what we're going to do. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is going to take this over to the ironing board, and I'm going to iron up the seam allowance, which is 1/2 inch on here. So that's just going to be ironed up, so I know I've got a point of where I'm aiming for. I think then what I'll do is attach the skirt, the lining to the skirt, where we're not faffing around with the zip, because then that means that's all centred down. I also need to just tack this, don't I, as well to my side seam, so that it doesn't flick under when we're wearing it. Okay, that's going to go under there like that to neaten all that off, and we're going to start and take out our tacking, and then we'll come back and we'll neaten up where we are with our zip. So let me go and do that, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, so let me just show you where I am at the moment. I have now just done a few stitches just to it. It looks a bit messy, sorry, but they are there because of all the fraying inside. So I've done a couple of stitches where I've attached the grosgrain ribbon just to the seam allowance at the side seams, so down the sides here. I've done that on both sides. I've then also done a very loose, what we call a herringbone stitch, which is this crisscross stitch just here, if you can see that. So it's very loose, lots of play in it, and that's just attaching this edge of this grosgrain ribbon to the seam allowance only of the top of the waistband. So that just means that that grosgrain ribbon isn't going to flip over. That's my theory. And then it's going to be attached at the back here, which will keep it straight anyway, so there's no room for that to go over. So what I've done then is I have turned under the 1/2 inch on my seam allowance on the edge of my waistband on the lining, and now what I've done is I've located on the lining and on the main garment the the point at which the princess seam hit the waistband on both, and then I've just followed it down and put a pin in to hold the lining down, as you can see, and then I can adjust that and tack that down. I'm going to take out those tacking stitches later. And I'm going to do that all the way around. So then the next place I'm going to attach now, so there's the side seam, and that's going to just fit on there. So again, I'm going to just pull that slightly just to make sure that's lining up. And this is where your seam allowances are really important, because if we've used the same pattern and we've used the same seam allowance on all of it, then this should all just fit together like a big fabric 3D jigsaw piece puzzle. This is the theory. So a little bit of give there. Let's just see if that will ease through. Yeah, that has now. Okay, that's nice and flat. And again, we're going to match up this seam allowance here. So there's the point at which that meets there. Hold that down. Go through to the outside. And we need to make sure that the lining isn't so tight within the inside. If we want any bagginess, we want it on the lining on the inside where people aren't going to see. We don't want the outside here. This has all got to be smooth and straight on the outside of our garment. Oh, a little thread there. If you start to see little threads, this is your time to start and take those off. Obviously we've got some bits that we need to just take out. That's a tacking thread. Just start to, so we're starting just to tidy up the garment as well. I haven't taken out any of the tacking stitches for the pleats yet, but anything on the bodice I am taking out. Okay, so then we're going to just put one more pin, that's the word I'm looking for, just to the other side of where this skirt fits. Okay, so this zip is going to fold back on itself. We can take that piece of grey grain ribbon out because we don't need that now. That's surplus to requirements. And where we've got our flap of our fabric for our skirt, that at this point here is going to get folded back. I wanted to trim off some of this. I didn't want the selvage edge to be part of my lining, so let me just trim down from there to roughly round about the bottom of the zip to about there. Scissors. I'm just taking off about 1/2 inch, just take that fuzzy edge off. That was me just trying to use the maximum I had of my lining, not knowing how it was going to work. And then what's going to happen is we're going to fold that bit back so it's away from the zipper teeth, but neatens off that edge. Where's my pin's gone? They're here, hiding from me. I'm going to put a pin, that's going through all 3 layers at the moment, but when I hand stitch it, I'm only going to hand stitch it to the zipper tape. And so again, I'm going to neaten this up further down with a French seam. But for now, I just want to just neaten this off so I can show you. Again, we don't want any pulling on the garment at all. So if anything, just ease it up a little bit so there's no pull, no tension on the outside of the skirt. Okay. That's one side done. Right, let's get the other side done. Let's trim off this again. About here. No exact science when you're making it up as you go along. Right, so again, flick your zip around the right way. Then we're going to fold in the excess here. We can take a little bit more of this off if we've got too much still. I think we have got a little bit too much, a little bit too generous with thinking what we might need. So we want that to fold back so it's out of the way of the zipper teeth, otherwise it will cause problems when we're using our zip. And again, pin in here. And then we're just folding this back here now onto the inside. Tailor tack for a pleat, we don't need that anymore, we can take those out. I was thinking earlier when I was making this, I think this hashtag or the strap line for this sew-along ought to be how to take a simple dress and make it even more and to make it complicated. I have a certain knack for doing that, I think, but hopefully you've been able to follow along. So there we've got our zip, and there we've got our lining neat into the bottom of our zip. And if I put that up there, once that's hand stitched on there, you'll see that that will be very neat. And I'm going to finish off the bottom of the skirt lining down here. So let me do that, and then we'll come back and we'll finish off the rest of this bodice lining for you and just show you how we changed that last bit. But we're on the homeward stretch apart from the hem. That's another bit. So I'm hopeful that we can get this sorted out and tightened and neatened up on the inside for everybody, so that you can see how we're getting on. So again, let's just match this up to the side seam. You thought you got rid of me then, didn't you? I found something else to do. That's the problem all the time, isn't it? And the reason why I hand stitch this is because I haven't found a way of being able to machine stitch this from the inside and to have it really neat. And so it's going to be one of those situations again where I say to you that actually just take a little bit of time to hand finish it off. Hand sewing might not be your forte, but just stick with it. It is one of those things that gets easier in time. As you can see, this is all going to be beautifully finished inside and look lovely, so it's worth persevering with. I think this is why we lose ourselves in sewing, isn't it? There's always bits to do, and takes our concentration and takes our mind off what's going on in the world, which is no bad thing sometimes. I know that it's a very privileged thing to say, to be able to say that, and I don't underestimate that or how grateful I am for being in that position. Okay, so there we go. This is what we're looking to get, where we've got the lining all nice and neat on here. These can all come out now. All these tailor's tack should just pull out nice and easily. The gathering can come undone as well. Finish with all of that. So let's tidy all of this up, and then we can come back and see how we're getting on. So, homeward stretch, people. Morning everybody, it's Claire here again, and another day, another session on our Upton dress, Cashmerette Upton dress. Here we are at the moment. We've got a bodice, we've got a skirt attached, we've got pleats looking lovely. Now last night, because it was a PJ time, I did the hem on the bottom of the dress. I have yet to do the hem on the lining, so I was just letting that hang for a bit, just check to make sure that it's going to be right. And I also need to just do the zip on the back. But here's a quick shot of where we're at the moment. Well, it's a beautiful day in here in Spain, so I am going to hurry up and get this Upton dress finished, because if we're lucky, then I can actually put it on and hopefully take some shots outside of me wearing it. So that will give you a true idea of how it's all fitting. Keep on seeing threads on it. So what I did last night was I have hand sewn the hem. It is quite a big hem, but it's worth the time and effort, because then you don't get a real big line all the way across the end. I have pressed it. But all I did was I overlocked the edge first, and then the width of the overlocking I've just double overturned and then just hand stitched it. So you can see a little bit of the stitches on the other side, but hopefully that'll just fade into the background from a distance. Again, if, there's a saying, isn't there, if a blind man on a galloping horse at 6 feet can't see it, then it's okay, something like that. Anyway, I am noticing there's quite a lot of static with this between the lining and the polyester. It's a viscose lining and a polyester outer. And I have read somewhere, and I don't think I'm going crazy by saying this, but I have read somewhere that if you sew a coin into the bottom of the hem, it actually dissipates the static. So I've got nothing to lose, so I'm going to try that. So I'm going to make sure that when I turn this hem up, and I'm probably going to double turn it, I've overlocked this as well just to neaten it off and give me something to work with. Then I'm going to turn it up probably 1/2 inch, and in Spain we've got some really nice little coins, and they're a bit like the half-pence size we used to have in the UK, so really small, and I shouldn't notice that it's there. It'll also put a little bit of weight in the bottom of the skirt for me, so I'm just going to put one in at, should I put it at the side or centre back? Maybe one each side might just keep the lining down for me, so that if the skirt does decide to take off, the lining isn't going to go with it. Yeah, I'll get 2 of those little coins, and then I'll just sew those in at the end, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So yeah, I'm going to do the I'm only going to machine sew the hem on the lining because it's just quicker and you're not really going to see that. I spent the time doing the outer hem. The other thing that I've also done is I have hand stitched again the lining of the bodice down at the waistband again here on this seam here. Just can't hold it, it's so slippery here. So around there from side seam to side seam. I've left the back seams open at the moment so that I can get in there just to sew this down and to make sure this goes nice and neat. But I'll show you what I'm going to do with that, and to neaten off the tapes at the top as well so that they sit nicely. And we're nearly there, so let me get moving, stop waffling, and we'll get on. So well done if you've stayed with me this far. I hope you found it interesting. It's certainly taking longer than I thought, so I'll have to put this up in stages, but yeah, we're nearly there now, so let's get on with it. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is do the hem. I'm going to turn it up towards the inside, and I'm going to turn it over twice, probably 1/2 inch at a time. That'll take it up 1 inch in total, and that should hopefully cover the difference between the outer skirt and the underskirt, because I don't want it to show underneath, obviously. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I use my seam gauge, which is this one here, which has a movable gauge, so you set it at whatever distance you want. In this case, I should probably set it up at 1 inch. Mark all of my hem with a pin at 1 inch, and then, oh, where's my pins gone? Here, buried. It's all right, my desk gets decidedly messier and messier each hour of sewing goes on, but I'll do a big clean up at the end, I promise. Okay, I won't make you sit through that. Okay, so I'll put a pin through at 1 inch, just measure that all the way around from the edge. We cut the edge out the same, and the bottom of the linings all finished the same, so that should be fine in terms of measurement. Oh, pin just coming out. And then all I'll do is fold across to the pin, to where the pin's sitting, fold it over again, and then I'll put my pin in to hold it still. So just so there's my pin at 1 inch down, fold it over once to meet the pin, and then fold it over again, and then take my pin out of the bottom and just move it up. There's all sorts of ways for doing this kind of thing. The other thing that I might need to do is just put a row of, yeah, I think I might do that actually, because this is, as I've just started to do this, the lining is stretched slightly, so it's going to be a little bit puckered. So I'm going to just run a row of gathering stitches just above the overlocking, and then that will mean that I can just pull it in and cinch in slightly on the gathers, and that will then account for any roundness in the hem and ease it in for me. So let's do that. I keep contradicting myself, don't I? But that's what I'm going to do. So let's do that first, and then I'll come back to you. We'll get the hem sewn down, and then we'll get on to the interesting bit, which is just finishing the back, and then hopefully the sunshine will stay for me whilst we just get the get a quick video of it outside when I'm wearing it. Okay folks, back in a minute. Okay, so I've just finished doing the run of stitches. I did loosen off my tension, so that was lower than usual, and I've also lengthened my stitch length. This is a stitch length number 4. So as you can see, that's just going to give me a nice edge, and what you can do is you can just pull on your top thread gently. Is it the top thread or bottom thread? Yeah, just cinch it in slightly so that when you turn it over and then turn it over again, the fullness is there. And remember how it was folding over before and making it all uneven? Well, now, because we've cinched in and taken that fullness in, the fullness will fall into the middle, and that should then, when I sew over this top stitch over this, it'll just sew nice and neatly. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm also going to get those coins, and I'll just show you them before I pop them in the hem. So these are the coins that I'm going to use. It's just 1 cent, 1 cent from €1. And it's about the size, I can remember halfpences. I'm getting sweets from the sweetie shop at halfpence each. And I'm just going to make it so that I can pop it into the hem. I'll probably put on the inside and then fold it over. Then I'll have to just hand sew that little bit to get around it. But it should just give a little bit of weight, but it should just also keep the static at bay, I believe. Well, we'll try it anyway. It's an interesting exercise, isn't it? So let me get on and do that, and once we've got that sorted out, then we'll be moving on. So I've just sewn the coins into the side seam. They've just got a little like pocket there. Hopefully you won't see that in the whole scheme of things on the hem. Once that's all done, and I've pressed the hem now as well, a little bit wavy, but it'll be okay, you won't see it so much. And what I've done here is I've left the side seam open on the bodice. This is the side of the bodice here. The waistband and the armhole is up here. And what we need to do now is we need to neaten off the top of the zipper tape. Now, I don't ever just snip these off because you tend to get a little bit of a rough edge on the end. So what we want to do is we actually want to fold this back. This is from Bag Making Skills. We want to fold this back to make like a right angle at the very, very top of that zipper tape, and then when we sew that in, it'll sew in very nicely. So the way that I've done that is, there's the top of the zipper tape, and we're just going to take it over at the top, but then twist it out to the side. How did I do it? Right, okay. So we twist it back on itself so that the zipper tape comes out at a right angle, and it makes a little right angle pleat in the edge of the tape. We can just hand stitch that to hold that still, but you can see that zipper tape is just going straight across. Oh, little hairs from the silk organza. So I'll put a pin in there just to hold that for now. So if we try and do it all in one, where we're securing the zipper tape and we're actually doing the neatening of the edge at the same time, we're just asking for trouble really, because it's just going to be too much to try and do in one go. So let's neaten off the top of the tape first, and then we can then sew with confidence then when we're doing the next bit. So I'm just going to just put a couple of stitches in here. Got some thread. Not so short bit of thread, isn't it? Need a bit more. I must admit, it's very tempting to get racing towards the end at this stage of a dress or any finished project. So I'm going to urge you that just to take your time, because this last half an hour that you're going to spend working on this garment is all of the finishing. So it is going to show, so please just try and take your time. I know if you've got something to go to that you want to wear the garment at, it can be very tempting to rush it. Or if you've got an excited child or customer waiting for you, but really you just need to take the time just to finish these properly. It'll make all the difference, elevate your sewing immensely. So we don't just snip off the end of these tapes because we don't want it to unravel. But if we've got a bit protruding at the end here, then I might just snip that little bit off. But I wouldn't ever take it to the top of the tape because they do tend to unravel. So it's just got a few stitches in just to hold it at a right angle. So there's the top of my zipper tape there, and there's the bit where I folded it across. It's just got a little pleat in the tape. And when we just pull the lining over the top and then secure that down, it's going to make that very nice and neat. Okay, so I am going to take off just that little bit of tape there where it's protruding over the edge of the right angle, because I feel we've got enough there just to hold it. Let's do the other side whilst we're here. Little knot in the thread. Where's the other side gone? Here it is. Okay. So again, just neaten it up if you need to, just to make sure that that's sitting nicely. You only just need a few stitches in. If you use the coordinating thread, you shouldn't need to take them out again either. And another tip is if you're trying to match thread to your garments or to your fabric, it won't be a garment yet, but it'll be a fabric, it'll just be fabric at the start. Always try and go one shade darker. If you've got a choice of lighter or darker, always go one shade darker. That was what I was always told, because then it doesn't show up so much, whereas the lighter will show up more. So that's just one little trick. This was the closest I got in my stash for the blue. Okay, put our needle out of the way, don't want to get too mixed up with our threads. We've got a few things, and I'll just snip the end of that tape off just there, because we've got plenty, it's not going to unravel. Okay, so then the next thing we need to do is to neaten down this edge down here that we've got still open, which is down the side of the zip. What I'm going to do first is just trim a little bit of the lining off, because I want the lining to be a little bit further inset. So from the waistband up, I'm going to take about 1/2 centimetre of the lining fabric off. Just be careful, because if you go through where you're, and I'm not going to take it right to the top, I'm just going to, so it's just that much, just taken off about 1/2 centimetre. That side, let me just do this side as well. Because what this will do is it'll just pull the lining in slightly, because we want to have a gap along the zip for the lining, because otherwise the lining can get caught in the zip and be a real nuisance. So just not right to the very top, because we need that to neaten it off. So I've just taken a little bit off here, you can see. Right, okay. Then what we're going to do is turn this a little bit inside out, and I have pinned it, but we can take that pin out. I've pinned it to the waistband. So if you remember, we'd sewn our lining fabric from the side seam all the way around the front, so we've secured that bit already, but we'd left this side seam open here, just the back panel. We're going to just turn our dress round to the start again. And what we're going to do now is we're going to attach this lining by just pulling it over slightly. We're going to attach that to the inside of the zipper tape. So it's only, oh, sorry, doing it off camera, aren't I? I'm doing it to myself and not to you. So here we've got our zip. Oh, there we've got our zip. Put some more light on home. Is that better? So there we've got our zip here, and our zipper tape, and there's our raw edge. Here's the raw edge of our lining from the back of the panel. So we're going to flip that over the top and then bring it down towards the waistband. We still want the waistband seam to match up, so we can match that point together. And pull your seam out, just your lining over slightly as well, because we do want it to just sit quite well. Against this, and just pin it at right angles so that we've got that lined up pretty well. You can just check it to make sure that that's right. So just lining up there. Okay, so keeping your lining, I know we've taken 1/2 centimetre off, but we want it to be pulling just slightly across, because we're going to stitch the lining over to the edge of the tape, but not right up by the teeth. We're going to do it just to the edge of the tape, so that will keep it out of the way of the zip teeth, but not affect the fit. That's what we want. Okay, so I've got this pulled across here, and I'm going to start at the top here. I'm going to feel where my teeth are and just start at the top here, and then sew all the way down along there to the waistband. The edge of the waistband is already turned up on my lining, so that should finish off neatly at the seam, just there. And we're just going through the seam allowance. We're not going through the dress fabric onto the front, it's just through the seam allowance, and that will then just keep that nice and neat. So keep your fingers crossed. I'm going to move my needle across as well. Just make sure it's going to miss your foot. Yes, it is. Right, okay. So if I go this side, you can see we've got a row of lining, a row of stitching there, and we've got the just row of the stitching here. Then when we turn it through the other side, other way, we can just neaten that off at the edge there, because it just needs a few stitches just to hold it down a little bit more. But then we've got this lining sewn onto the back of the zip and away from the zip teeth, so that when we do zip this up, it's going to sit away from the lining. See, one side's been done and one side hasn't. Okay, and then we can press that away. We can just then neaten this off and sew this down now to the edge of the skirt. Edge of the skirt, yes, the edge of the skirt from the waistband across. So we just continue that seam across, pull it down and sew that across, and that will then neaten that off. I do just need to do a little bit more work on the top here. Probably should have pulled that in slightly, but I can pull that in with a few more stitches just to neaten it off. So I'll get on and do the other side then, and we are on the homeward stretch, folks. So let me just carry on doing that. And this is why you can see that when we were keeping that lining free from the waistband, when we were sewing that down, if you can remember, we wanted to just keep that loose. That was so that we could neaten this off. And if you can see here, once I've then neaten that into there, we've got a lovely line all the way down where we've hand stitched our zip down to the bottom of the tape, our lining down to the bottom of the tape, but then it should make it all nice and neat inside for you. Okay, so I'm off to do that and we'll come back to you in a bit. Okay, this is going to be take two because I wasn't happy with the way that was sitting, so I have unpicked it. What I want you to do before you start and do turn it over is to really push that zip of the tape down and to pull over all of your seam allowances and all of your all of the seam allowance from the neck edge as well over the top really tightly, because you want it to be as tight as possible to there. The rest is the same. It was just that little bit that I didn't tell you to do, which I should have done. So get a pin right in the top there to hold it all over and tight. So I've folded all of my seam allowances from my neck edge, look, right over the top of that zipper tape. I'm then going to do exactly the same as I did before. I'm going to match up my waistband here. Seam for that. Make sure that's going to sit right. And again, I still want to have it proud on the waistband. Just zip down a little bit more. Give me a little bit more room to work. So as you can see at the end of the last video, it does work really, little clip, sorry, it does, this method does work really well and produce a really nice clean finish down the zip. I just messed up the top. So I just, as I say, seam ripper came out. This is what happens when you're trying to rush and get things finished before the sunshine goes. I've also got my mum coming over to stay with us for 10 days from tomorrow. I'm going to go and pick her up from the airport along with my husband, who's back from his stag party that he's been on for his son's wedding. So I've had 4 lovely days to sew, and I'm so pleased because it has just given me the time to record this video, and hopefully you find it useful. Hopefully I've managed to impart some tips that I've picked up over my years of sewing. So there we are again, we've got this sewn down here, and it's really quite tight at the top there. The other thing I think I'll do is I'll change my presser foot as well and put a zip, that adjustable zipper foot that I had before on. Because only takes a few seconds to change this foot out, but it will just mean that I can just get closer to where I need to be. I don't want to sew the tape so close to the lining, so close to the teeth of the tape, because I want those to stay out of the way there. Gosh, what a mess I'm making. Right, okay, so back to where we were then. As I say, all the seam allowances are over towards the lining side. Let's hope take 2 is a little bit more effective. I'm going to go quite close at the top. The idea is just to keep a nice even distance all the way down your dress back. Okay, keep your fingers crossed, folks. Let's have a go and see how we are getting on with this now. See what's up. Right, okay. So we can just snip off some of the little fabric on here. I wouldn't snip the zipper tape, but you could just snip there just to make it a bit nicer. And now, yeah, that's already not much nicer. Okay, so we've got a nice top there to the zip. No fiddling, nothing else to do after I'd unpicked it. But then when this goes up at the zip at the top, look how nice and neat that is going to be when we've got the other side done the same as well. Okay, and on the inside, when it's zipped up, again we're back to where we were. Oops, you can see that the zip tape is all nice and neat down, and I've just got to then hand sew this bit shut here on the waistline, and that will do. I left it open to the side seam to give us enough room to work, because if we're trying to battle inside it as well, that's not going to work very well. So let me just get on and do the other side, hand sew this, and then hopefully the next time you see me I'll be wearing it. Fingers crossed. Okay, I'll see you soon. finished Upton dress. I hope you like it. I've just shown you a bit of a video of me wearing it outside in the sunshine, and hopefully we caught that before the rain arrives, because I think the sky was a bit threatening over my shoulder. But I'm really pleased with it. I'm pleased with the fit. There's a couple of things that I want to do next time. I just want to widen the straps here, because I've got a little bit of bra strap showing there, but I can put some lingerie hooks tags in the top here just to do that. I also, if you when we were talking about the pattern, I kept in a little bit of length on the top here from the 14. I'm going to take that out next time, because I will be making another one. So I'm going to take that out next time. And also I just want to look at the fit here, because I'm quite shallow here, and whilst I took out a little bit of dart with some of the fabric. Possibly I could do a little bit more, but the other thing that I'm going to do as well is that I can pinch, if I breathe in, I can pinch about an inch on the back here. So I think that the next thing that I'm going to do as well is go down to a size 12, all the way down. This one was a 12 at the shoulders, a neckline, and then went down into a 14. The skirt is a 14. But there's plenty of fullness on the skirt, so I don't need to worry about that. And I just feel I've got room here, even if I was sitting down, and even with my waist staying, to just take out a little bit more, have it a little bit snug. It depends on how you like to fit. I just want it to accentuate my waist, and I like the curviness that I get from it coming out over my hips as well. So I didn't put the pockets into this one. If I were to do that, I think I would just put the pockets into the main fabric. I have lined this one, as we know, on the skirt, and the instructions don't include a lining on the skirt, but for the hot summer weather over here in Spain, I definitely need to have a lined dress, and this one is polyester fabric, so that's why I've done that. Overall, fabulous fit. As other people have said, definitely toile your bodice. You don't use a lot of fabric. Use an old sheet and an old duvet cover, or pick up something cheaper on the sale at a shop like Dunelm or something like that. It doesn't have to use a lot of fabric. Just do the top layer, don't do your lining as well, just do the top layer. Don't edge any of the seams, just literally put the princess seams in as I've done here, or dart your bodice, and then pin it at the back. The other thing that I found was that I was able to do is when I had my toile together, if I put the pin in at the very top here to hold my seam allowances together, I could then wriggle into it by putting my arms through and my head through, and then I could then hold it and then do the pins to pin the bodice on the back. Or if you've got a fit buddy, even better. But for me, I hadn't got that, so I just had to do what I can. So, as I say, in conclusion, great pattern. Really enjoyed this. I shall be making more in my sewing journey. I think I'd also like to try it with a circle skirt without the pleats on as well. I think that could be really nice, so I might have a look at doing one of those one day as well. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you like it? Did I do a good job? Have you picked up some tips on whilst you've been following me with sewing along? Did it get a bit boring? I need all of the feedback so that if you do like it, I can do more, and if you don't, I stop now and I don't waste my time or yours. But hopefully it's been good for you. I've thoroughly enjoyed having you along, and hopefully it's resulted in a beautiful dress, and hopefully I've inspired you to have a go too, because have a go, see what you do. You know, you might not be perfect straight away, but it's a journey, and we're all on this journey together. And as I've shown in the video, there's been a couple of places where I didn't quite get it right the first time. But get your unpicker out, have a little look at it, start again, and you'll soon be making amazing garments and feeling fabulous, and making them fit your unique style and your unique self. So have a great day, everybody. Thank you for watching, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye.